Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. Going to preview the Panthers game coming up on Sunday. We're going to talk a little bit about the last game, Seahawks win in Detroit in overtime. Lots of things to catch up on as far as injuries and roster moves, all that kind of stuff. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's midweek and we got a game coming up this week. We got some interesting stuff to talk about today. We've got I've been looking at some snap counts and seeing how guys have been being used, and I think that I want to get your opinion on a couple of these because there's some interesting stuff in here.
Yeah, fun stuff. It's been a great week, really. I mean, the win, I just think kind of changed the season for me a little bit. After that first week, it's like we had certain expectations going into the regular season. That Rams game now seemingly maybe not a true reflection, gladly, of where the Seahawks were as a team in that first game, and then the second game against a formidable opponent in Detroit, a team on the rise at their home stadium. The Seahawks were able to take care of business and go in and really do some things that we expected them to be able to do against the Rams, thankfully, and kind of turn this thing around. And now here we go. That seems like that's the way it is for me. Now we're set. Now we go forward. We've got a Panthers team that comes in. Bryce Young's a little injured. He may not even play. Taking a look at possibly Andy Dalton. Last time Andy Dalton faced us, he was playing with New Orleans, and I believe that he beat us, and that was just last year. So a lot to talk about with regards to that. What did you think about the turnaround and the play in Detroit, Keith? We hadn't had a chance to really talk about it after our reaction show. We consolidated and kind of turned this show into a catch-all for the week.
Yeah, I don't know. Now that I would agree with you. I think that the Detroit game kind of cured a lot of things that we were worried about because they played a better team and they played on the road and they were able to beat them after losing to a bad team at home. It had us all kind of worried. I like what kind of where this team is headed, and you're right. Like Carolina is not a good football team. This is a extremely winnable game, one that should be won extremely easy for Seattle, which means they'll probably make it more challenging than it needs to be. But the Seahawks are definitely the better team this week, and I think they have a chance to go get another win, move to 2-1, and really get this season going in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, and Geno Smith, congratulations to Geno, just named the Air Player of the Week in the NFL, so that's really good. He had a great game, really showed out throughout, was able to have the time to throw. I thought Shane Waldron schemed a really nice game for the offense, using 13 personnel quite a bit to have 3 tight ends on the field, as well as move the pocket around a little bit, run some more play action than they did in the first game. Geno finished 32 of 41, 328 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Got the tight ends involved, not only just blocking for him, helping those inexperienced tackles for us, Forsyth on the left side, Curhan on the right. But they also did a great job receiving the ball as well. Noah Fant had 4 catches for 56 yards. Will Disley was 3 for 3 on targets for 35 yards. Kobe Parkinson 2 of 3 for 41 yards. Both those, all those guys played instrumental roles in key points in that game, I thought. Noah Disley is actually the highest graded Pro Football Focus tight end in the NFL this season so far at 81 with a
Will
grade of
Disley?
81.
You said
Disley.
Noah Disley, so that's two different people. So Will Disley?
Yeah, Will Disley.
Interesting, because he's played the fewest snaps of any of the three guys. He played only 16 snaps in week 1, 31%. That was up to 38 snaps in week 2, which is 53%. So he's only played 54 snaps so far, whereas Fant and Parkinson both are at 59, which I know doesn't sound like that much, but the 16 snaps that Disley played week 1, is 6 less than Parkinson and 9 less than Fant. So everything was much more equal in week 2. So most of that came in that one game. I was surprised a little bit that those numbers were as low as they were for the three players. All three of them, in the 50s, 2 at 59 and 1 at 54. When you look at like Metcalf and Lockett, they're up over 100 snaps already each, which means that the tight ends are playing less than it feels like they're playing when you're watching the game.
Well, yeah. I mean, you almost have to throw out the first game in a way. I mean, we only ran 3 plays essentially, or not 3 plays, only picked up 3 yards in that second half on 13 plays. And that's just kind of crazy. But one of the things I found really interesting on this tight end group thing today was the team announced that they are signing tight end Bradley Russell to their active roster from the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad. And this guy's not much of a pass catcher. He's more of a Will Disley kind of guy. He's a blocking guy primarily, and above average at doing that. College career walk-on guy, ended up being their played for Colorado, won the team's Buffalo Heart Award, created and voted on by the fans, given to the player that demonstrates the most grit, determination, and toughness on the team. So that's an interesting signing. And Will Disley kind of appears on the injury list this week with a shoulder. What hasn't been able to practice yet. So maybe that is a preemptive move to mitigate that injury. And
interesting that they chose to do that and not Tyler Mabry, who's been with the team for like 3 years and is
and
a
on
blocker.
the practice squad.
And he's on the practice squad, which means they could have just called him up and had him play. But they went and got a 4th tight end, really a 5th tight end, and signed him to the active roster instead of promoting Mabry. So that is interesting to me.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, he's going to be on the roster. He had he's a good looking prospect, and maybe the team felt like they've seen Tyler Mabry now for 3 years plus, and it's time to take a look at the upside of a new player, up close and personal, and we'll just see how long this thing lasts. And if he stays on the active roster after this week. I thought that Stone Forsythe and Jake Curran played really well, and they did. Stone Forsythe had no sacks allowed, no hits, 3 hurries, pass blocking efficiency, which is a Pro Football Focus stat, was 96.6%. Curran had no sacks, no hits, 4 hurries, and just did a great job. And without those two playing that role, this team could have and game could have gone a different way. I mean, the game went into overtime as it was. And Gino was able to really play well. I mean, had close to 80% completion percentage, a couple touchdowns, and again, player of the week there, passing the ball. So just kind of crazy. Couple notes on the roster beyond that one signing. Artie Burns was signed to the 53 roster off the practice squad. This is not an elevation. This is a signing. He's now on the active roster. Mike Morris was placed on injured reserve. He's going to have surgery on his shoulder. This is the second procedure on the shoulder. He had one in the summer, came back, played in the first game, and then got the shoulder injury again and hasn't played since. They tried to heal it by just allowing him time to recoup, and that wasn't working. So he's going to have that procedure, and he's done for the season. Seahawks cut Matt Landers and Robert Rochelle, cornerback Robert Rochelle, off the practice squad and signed Tyjon Lindsey to the practice squad, which is one of the kick returners from preseason that we both liked. Carl Davis, the defensive tackle, and Tease Tabor as safety to the practice squad. And they released, this is maybe the biggest news, second-year outside linebacker Tyreek Smith was waived today.
Yeah, that's the surprising one because there was a lot of hype about him in camp, and the coaches really liked him, and he has gotten a chance to, really kind of give him to come in and earn a spot. But honestly, when I start looking at snap counts and that kind of stuff, it ends up being a little different than you kind of would expect. Like he hasn't played. He played 9 snaps in week 2, nothing in week 1. That's it. 14% of the snaps in that game didn't play in week 1. Clearly, they felt like they could move on with
or get him to the practice squad.
Yeah. I mean, he may end up in the practice squad, but the fact that they released him outright in order to create room for a tight end,
right?
That's an interesting.
And Artie Burns.
Or yeah, so is him and Morris both are no longer on the roster. So with those two out, you get a tight end and Artie Burns up. It does leave the team a little short-handed at linebacker. But they still have their top 4 guys, so I don't think anyone's that worried about
Levi
it.
Bell on the practice squad still.
Yeah. So, but it is. We once thought there was a lot more depth there than there is at this exact moment. So, kind of worth looking at, worth thinking about.
Yeah, it is interesting these moves. I think the Tyreek Smith thing. This to me points to the idea that he would be a practice squad guy. I don't think somebody's going to sign them to their 53 roster. If he clears waivers, he's available for anybody's practice squad. I think Seattle would bring him back and see how he continues to develop, give him another opportunity to come up onto the roster throughout the year, depending on injuries and what they need for special teams on a certain game or whatever. I just wanted to talk about Artie Burns a little bit because it sounds like he's going to get an opportunity here. I was going to talk about the injury situation for the Seahawks just to watch. I mentioned Will Disley already. DK Metcalf had that back rib thing. Pete's not going to practice him this week, but said he's going to be ready for the game. Reek Woolen is the player to watch, I think. He's got that chest thing. According to Pete, it doesn't look like he's going to have a chance to play this week. And therefore the Artie Burns kind of moving up scenario. But the nice thing about Artie Burns, Keith, is he's doing well. I mean, he ranks 4th in passer rating allowed and 5th in yards per snap in the slot, playing from the slot. And just to contrast that, and this is from Corbin Smith, by the way, Julian Love ranks dead last with a 155.7 passer rating against in the slot, allowing 6 receptions for 99 yards and a touchdown. Kobe Bryant has also given up 6 catches for 60 yards and 7 targets and 102.4 rating. So when we look at areas on the defense where we're struggling, it is from those 2 players, Love and Kobe Bryant. I just wanted to kind of ask you what you thought of that, and are you seeing that, like when you watch the All-22?
It's true.
Are you seeing those sorts of things?
I am, but that's no surprise. Kobe Bryant has looked kind of bad. Julian Love, has looked a little lost. Like he doesn't quite know what his responsibilities are at times, which is a little surprising given he's a vet player
and signed a nice contract and had the fanfare around that signing.
yeah, I expected more from him, but yeah, he's looked a little like he doesn't always know what his responsibilities are. So I hope they can get that straightened out and he can get they can get back because he was a good player last year for the Giants. He's a guy that can play. They're just not getting a lot out of his skill set at the moment, and but at the same time, they are getting Jamal Adams back. They play the same position. So maybe this is a situation where Love's responsibilities decrease, and therefore he can focus on fewer things and do better at those things than try and do everything. As for Kobe Bryant, I don't know. I've watched both games, watched every defensive snap from the all 22. He's just beaten to spots. He's slow to react. I have not been particularly impressed with his play so far this year. And he was a guy that he struggled a bit at the beginning of last year, but he got better as the year went on. And now he seems to have taken this like big step back. It's been very difficult to watch when it's time to watch game tape.
Yeah. And there's so many other options that the Seahawks have playing the nickel. Now, I still think he has a role to play. He was originally an outside corner, felt really comfortable at that, at the college level. Hasn't really had an opportunity to compete on the Seahawks roster at that spot. But maybe that's where he's best suited. I think, the scheme is part of the issue for the Seahawks as far as, him operating in the zone and giving up too much space. You've seen several different corners, I think, struggle in this scheme. And the Seahawks defense as a whole struggle a little bit. And so it's hard to kind of pin it on him without knowing what he's being asked to do.
True. There is that. But at the same time, we got guys in his zone where he's the closest man to it, catching balls pretty regularly.
Yeah, both he and Love for sure.
And Love, yeah. And that's it's frustrating to watch, and it's one of those things where, like, okay, you'd expect these guys to have figured out these their assignments and be performing better by this point. So, yeah, they do have other things. You get Jamal Adams back. You got Artie Burns up. Hopefully, Reek Woolen can get back. But if he doesn't play this game, that's fine. But you got Devin Witherspoon back, and he looked good. Mm-hmm. Like I was impressed.
He played 100% of the snaps last week.
Watching the all 22, he looked like every bit the 5th overall pick. He looked like the real deal. I know that he's had some trouble staying healthy in camp and preseason and all of that, but got out on the field in this game and was an impressive player. So, love what I saw from him. So at some point they're going to have him and Reek Woolen healthy at the same time. And their outside corner spots are going to be solid.
Yeah. So you had mentioned, all I've got is some Carolina stuff to talk about to cap off this thing. But you had mentioned you had a few things that you were going to bring in.
Well, yeah, because I was looking at snap counts, and you go through and you look and you're like, okay, Bobby Wagner's played 100% of the snaps on defense, all 147 of them between the two games. Jordan Brooks has played 109. He played only 64% of the snaps in week 1, but then that jumped to 86% in week 2. Brooks gave up 21 snaps to Devin Bush in week 1. He gave up 0 to him in week 2. So
Devin. I will say this: Devin Bush was injured, and that's why he didn't play last game.
Okay. I was looking at this and I'm like, well, it looks like they're easing Jordan Brooks in because of his thing. Like they gave Devin Bush, 21 snaps, and then as Brooks gets healthier, it looks not. But I did not.
Yeah.
I did not
I
realize
didn't know
that he
Devin
was
Bush was out
playing.
either, and I just read that today that Devin Bush was injured this last game, but he's better this week. He's expected to play along with Boye Mafe.
Yeah. Dre Jones played 68% of the snaps in week 1 and 79% of the snaps in week 2. That is unheard of in a Pete Carroll defense, because you have like when you go look at like Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett, those guys topped out at like 68%. That's what Pete wants from his starters on the defensive line. He wants fresh guys in there. So for Dre Jones to be getting 80% of the snaps, that tells you a little bit about the depth at defensive end and where they feel with this, and especially with sending guys now to IR and not replacing them.
Mike Morris, Mike Morris plays the same spot. Yeah,
and that's gonna make life challenging. So
and they haven't brought anybody in. I mean, the guys they're signing, to the practice squad, off, everyone else's 53s or practice squads. They're not defensive ends in a 3-4. You've still got Jaron Reed that can kind of slide back and forth. Cameron Young, when Cameron Young's in there, to kind of help a little bit there, and that's probably what they've done. Mario Edwards is playing on the other side. I bet his snap count, if I had to guess, is probably up close to 80% as well.
It's not. He played 30% in week 1 and 42% in week 2. He's only played 52 snaps this year.
So they're swapping then an extra pass rusher in.
They're bringing in guys like Derek Hall, who
that makes sense.
Has played more than I thought he had. When I go through it and look at this, he's played 44 total snaps, so 25% and 36% in the two. That's more than I anticipated when I started looking this up. I realized that in the second game there was no Boye Mafe, and Boye Mafe played 53% of the snaps in the first game, and then got hurt and was not available in week 2, and so that was going to put some more on other guys. And one of those guys, Tyreek Smith got 9 snaps, and Derek Hall got extra snaps. But yeah, I mean, it's Uchenna Nwasu is playing almost every snap. I mean, he's about 80% in both games. And then it's Darrell Taylor who's getting a lot of snaps on the other side. He played less than Boye Mafe in week 1, but with Mafe out, he played 70% of the snaps in week 2.
Yeah. And he had an up and down game. I saw him miss a couple things. I saw him make a couple plays. Otherwise, he didn't stand out for me. You'd mentioned Jordan Brooks earlier with Devin Bush out, getting more snaps. That's interesting because, when you go to nickel and dime, he's usually the guy that's going to come out. So that told me that maybe they're playing a little bit more base, especially with Julian Love struggling a little bit. I think that's interesting. Devin Bush is probably slightly better in coverage than Brooks. So it'll be interesting how they split that time with all three being healthy. And Jamal Adams' return imminent, probably not this week, but within a week or two, he's going to be back. So it'll be interesting to see how they divide all those things up.
You don't think he's going to play this week?
It doesn't sound like it. And if he did, he'd play limited snaps, like less than 10 or whatever.
Oh, see, when I listened to Pete's press conference, I got the feeling that he was going to play, but yeah, be on a pitch count. He's got 15 snaps in him in this week, and then they'll build that up over the course of a couple weeks.
Interesting.
So But yeah,
So
I still expect him
let's
to
talk
play.
about the Carolina Panthers a little bit, because this is kind of interesting. You know, that first pick in the draft, they drafted Bryce Young. Bryce Young's going to have the ups and downs that we probably knew he was going to have. He struggled a little bit in training camp through their preseason games. Now he's struggling a little bit in the regular season, completing 59% of his pass attempts, 2 touchdowns, a pair of interceptions. He's got an ankle injury in his last game that he hasn't practiced this week yet. The team added Jake Luton to their practice squad this week. It sounds like Bryce Young is questionable. At least that's what he is on the Wednesday first injury report of the week. If he's not able to go, the team's going to go with Andy Dalton. I mentioned that early. And so we'll see. There's a few other injury things. Shaq Thompson, their really nice linebacker, suffered a season-ending leg injury on Monday's loss to the New Orleans Saints as well. Brian Burns and Justin Houston were both limited in their practice, so they're hurt a little bit on their defensive interior and edge. Carolina allowed 134 yards to the Falcons in week 1 and 217 yards to New Orleans in week 2 in the running game. So this could be a game where Ken Walker finally breaks out. Ken's been looking good on limited opportunities to run the ball, I think. Mm-hmm. But if you feed him the ball in this game, I think this could be one of his 100-yard plus games for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that he looks like, he's looked good. I honestly think he's looked good so far in this season. He hasn't had a lot of chances because week 1 there just wasn't much going on. And
12 carries for 64 yards, but all of that came in the first half.
Yeah.
And then a pair of touchdowns against Detroit, but 43 yards on 17 carries, 2.5 average. So,
well, with the backup offensive line too. So, that's part of it as well. But like I said, I thought he's looked good and he's looked decisive. He's looked really quick to the point where I was expecting Charbonnet to be getting more of a run and it'd be more of a, option 1 and option 1A. But it's definitely been Ken Walker in the lead role so far. And this is the type of game where either Carolina is going to load the box to try and stop Ken Walker, which is going to make Geno Smith's job real easy, or Ken Walker is going to run all over them.
So if you were Carolina and you were Frank Reich, good head coach, well-coached team. They're just, depleted roster, starting over, kind of rebuilding. You've got Ejiro Evero as the defensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, their offensive coordinator, decent coaching staff, okay players. Some of the guys you're going to watch is Miles Sanders, came over from Philadelphia, Chuba Hubbard, been there for a few years now, DJ Shark, Jonathan Mingo was their kind of player that they drafted and expected to have him help right away, and he is. He's starting for them. Adam Thielen's been around for a long time and their slot guy. What do you expect on their offensive side against the Seahawks defense?
Well, actually, I kind of hope that Bryce Young plays, because unfortunately what you have in Andy Dalton is a limited player who happens to do what he does well is what Seattle's scheme struggles with, and that's a lot of underneath checkdowns, high percentage plays.
It's Jared Goff times, again, basically.
Yeah, he's Jared Goff with red hair. Although I think Goff's a little more athletic and yeah, he's got kind of limited in terms of his arm, but the offense that he's running is just perfect for his skill set.
Yeah, Andy Dalton is a great game manager, quarterback. So he's not going to make a lot of mistakes. And he's, when you take a look at a player like Bryce Young, completing 59% of his passes, a couple touchdowns, couple interceptions. Andy Dalton's going to complete closer to 70% of his passes. They're not, he's not going to be the dynamic guy with his legs. He's not going to push the ball down the field a lot, but based on the way that Seattle's defense plays anyway, it kind of plays into the style that Andy Dalton's really good at, which is, like you said, underneath.
Yep. Bryce Young's got a lower percentage of passes, but a higher yards per attempt. And if you're going to beat Seattle's defense...
And his legs.
Yeah. If you're going to beat Seattle's defense, the best way to do it is with a lot of underneath stuff, high completion percentage, low yards per attempt. And that's who Andy Dalton is. So I would attack Seattle's defense with that. Spread the team out, throw a lot, and throw 4 or 5 yards at a time and not try and push the ball downfield. Because Seattle's going to give them that. And if Seattle gives them that, and they're just going to take it and take it and take it and take it and move the ball. Now, it's hard to finish drives when you do that because one mistake and a drive ends. But you can move the ball. You can eat the clock. You can at least get field goals, maybe a touchdown here or there. It's a hard... it'll be hard to watch because it'll just feel like they're always... always converting and all of that. It makes for a difficult game to watch, but it's also one of those that we're kind of used to, right? Bend but don't break. They'll give up a lot of yards, but not a lot of points.
It does allow the Seahawks an opportunity to pick its places to really rush the passer, really get after Andy Dalton.
Because Dalton is a statue.
Stack the box. Consistently to stop the run. If you're making those guys one-dimensional, and you force the mistakes now and again. On the Seahawks side, when Seattle has the ball, Keith, what do you expect?
I expect Seattle to run the ball a lot, to hand it off to Walker, and when he gets tired, hand it off to Charbonnet and grind this game out, because I don't see Carolina being able to do much to slow down Seattle's running game. And then when there is, they do load the box, you go play action, and you got, DK Metcalf running down the sideline, and who are they going to have to cover him? I think that you can, Carolina's just overmatched, right, in terms of talent. And I think that you set them up, you run them, and then you take your deep shot. And if you do that, you're going to have success, and you're going to score a bunch of points.
Seattle has advantages all over the field in this game for the offense. DK Metcalf against CJ Henderson. You've got Tyler Lockett, lining up once in a while against Xavier Woods, or Dante Jackson. Jeremy Chin is playing some of the nickel once in a while. Now that he might be physically overmatched there, but and then the tight ends, and then you said the running backs, and then receiving out of the backfield is an option. I think there's just too many options for Seattle not to be able to move the ball consistently against this team. You'd mentioned running the ball and just running and running and running. That is certainly an option. I think they kind of let Geno Smith have some fun in this game and kind of turn him loose a little bit, especially in the first half. See where they can, what the defense is going to give them, test them a little bit. I think mix it up, pass, run, instead of run, pass a few different times. Just see if they can kind of extend some drives and take some shots. Like you said, DK Metcalf running down. This could be a game for Jackson Smith and Jigba to really kind of break out and have a good impact in this game. We talked about the tight ends earlier. Again, this is a great tight end game. I expect the tight ends
to play a lot in this game like they did last game, because they're partly in there to help the backup tackles. And they're going to be needed. And so they're going to play a lot. What that does is that means that you're not going to see, like, Cody Thompson has played 3 offensive snaps in 2 games. Right. Jake Bobo's played like 26. You haven't seen those guys much. It's been the top three guys and the tight ends who have gotten all the playing time. And I fully expect that to continue.
So I would really like to see the time of possession thing really flip on its, and Seattle get 10 or 11 possessions out of this game and score on at least half of them, and really rack up some yards, give those younger guys an opportunity to play, get Ken Walker over 100 yards, get Charbonnet a chance to really kind of get into a rhythm, have him run 2 or 3 drives in a row type of a thing. I'm not saying this is a guaranteed victory. There's nothing like that in the NFL. But this is a team where you can kind of allow yourself to kind of go deeper into the playbook a little bit, get some peripheral guys involved, and kind of have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also don't know if the Seahawks will do that. I don't know if they want to show the full playbook in a game where they don't need to. And I don't think they want to expose Geno Smith.
They don't need necessarily to show the full playbook. I think that they just need. I think that this is a team where you can execute your offense really well against.
Yeah, that I expect. I would also don't know if they were going to want to put Geno Smith. Sorry, excuse me. They don't going to want to put Geno Smith in harm's way, dropping him back to pass over and over again. That's part of why I think you're going to see a lot of the running game. Because you're going to win.
I mean, Derek Brown's their defensive end, and Justin Houston's on the the other side. Brian Burns is hurt. Justin Houston's limited in practice. We'll see how that goes.
Yep. So one of the things, though, this is kind of a Pete Carroll thing, is when you're the better team, you tend to want to reduce the
exposure.
I'm trying to think of the right word. The variability, the variance. If you're thinking in stats terms, right? When you're outmatched, you want to go in and you want to make the game unpredictable. You want things to swing back and forth because that's how you get results that swing your way. Because if you line up and play vanilla, both teams, the better, the more talented team's going to win. When you're the better team, you don't want to be adding variance to the game plan. You want it to be steady and stable. That way you get the result that you want, and the other team can't insert that variance. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense because I'm using some stats talk here, but
no, that's good. I love that.
And so I think in a game like this, that's part of why I expect the Seahawks to run the ball a lot, because it is something that will decrease the variance in the outcome and lead to a Seahawk win. Whereas, if you are Carolina, you want to throw caution to the wind. You want to throw stuff out there because chances are you're going to lose, right? But if you can get some of these things to connect, if you can make a big play here, if you can get a key turnover, maybe you can pull one out that no one expects you to get. And that's the,
Speaking
that's
of
kind of the way
variance
it works.
and variables, guess who the punter is in this game?
I don't know. Who is?
Johnny Hecker.
Is it really?
Yeah. Guess who's gotten the Rams out of a few fourth down pickles in the past and thrown the ball out of from the punting position and run some trick plays.
Yeah.
This is a team that's 0-2 and Frank Reich, and that they want to give their team some opportunities and some fun and a chance, and Johnny Hecker's like their punter. So I would expect some sort of fake play at some point.
Yeah, we haven't really seen much of that kind of stuff this year. And at some point you're going to, I think that if Seattle had done what we expected them to do against the Rams and had control of that game, I think the Rams would have done it. But once the Rams got the lead,
yes,
they didn't why would you, they were in a position where you want to reduce the amount of variance in terms of the outcomes. So, we didn't see any of that, but I can see it. I can definitely see it in this game.
I can see it too. All right. I think that's it. I mean, Charles Cross is probably going to be out. So we're going to go with the tackles that we know now.
You don't think Jason Peters is going to play?
That's an opportunity. I mean, he'd have to come up from the practice squad. So that will be an interesting choice to be made on Friday as who they elevate. I don't see him signing to the 53 before this game, but he could be elevated. He could also be down again. I don't know that this is the game that you throw him out there just because. I think you give him another week and you kind of come back and you see where you're at. But
I think this is the game where you activate him as your swing tackle instead of Greg Island.
Yeah,
and
that's possible.
If you end up in a position where you get him some snaps because
you could do that.
You know that at some point you're going to need him.
Yeah, I could see that. Ease him in. Yeah, interesting. Fun. All right. Okay, prediction time, Keith. Last time I asked you to go first. I'll go first this time. I see Seattle scoring some points here. And just easily, just kind of in the flow of the game, we're up above 30. I'm going to say Seahawks 35, Panthers 20.
Yeah, see, you're giving them a lot of credit. I went.
I know.
I went. My prediction on this is 31-13. I think that I don't think this game's going to be close. I really don't. I mean, I didn't think the Rams game was going to be close either. So take that as what it is. But I could see this being a situation where the game is just really low stress. Seahawks get a lead early. They do what they want to do. Carolina never really puts up much of a fight. Maybe they score a late touchdown at the very end to go from 13-20 and get your score to be right. But by then the game's
exactly what went through my mind.
But the game's decided well before that.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. I really do think that that's what we're going to see in this one.
Yeah. Fun. All right. Let's go get it. Get out of here with a 2-1 record. I would like that very much. So, okay. I'm going to be gone for a minute, just doing a little bit of traveling, going on a little fall vacation. I will be back next week, but not in time to do the recap show. So Keith's going to figure that out.
Yep. I don't know who the guest is going to be yet, but I will. I'm talking to a couple people, trying to get them to come and join me, and we'll have a show. It'll be fun.
And I'll be back Wednesday night or Thursday, so we can do a midweek show and a preview of the next game for sure. In fact, I think we have until Monday the following week because it's a Monday game against New York, right? Giants, yep. I think. Something like that. So, anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. And you can find the show at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. I am NWC Hawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. You can find the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. When you hit that subscribe button, you'll get that show in your feed every time that we record. So we'll talk to you guys next week, and have a great game. Enjoy the podcast with your guest, and we'll see you next time. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.